Forbes India and ServiceNow present the COO Collective.
Hello and welcome to the COO Collective, a special thought leadership series that we've been running, brought to you by Forbes India in association with ServiceNow. I'm your host, Paramita Chatterjee. Now, as part of this particular session, our focus is going to be on digital transformation and how can technology help you in achieving excellence in your operations and improve your customer experience, because indeed that is a challenge that companies are facing across the board. Digital transformation is a very large canvas, but what are those solutions that you should be using in order to really optimize your returns from investments in technology? Let's ask some of those questions to our panelists today on the show, starting with Vineet Pahel, who's the COO and SVP Delivery and Operations at Nihilent Analytics; Feroz Sheikh, Chief Information and Digital Officer, Syngenta Group; Sandeep Kinkar, Vice President, Manufacturing Operations, Praj Industries; Elisha Harrington, Innovation Officer, ServiceNow. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let me start actually with you, Feroz. And we are here talking about digital transformation, and particularly when it comes to technical excellence. What have been some of the challenges and learnings in the journey that Syngenta has taken towards digital transformation?
First of all, thank you, and glad to be here with the panel and sharing the opinions. Digital transformation, I think the biggest challenge, I would say, was actually not about technology. It was about change management and getting the larger organization and our customers to accept new ways of working, new ways of thinking, new kind of go-to-market offers in different countries that we operate in, and to be able to scale that, providing a smooth user experience. And I think this requires that mindset change that I spoke about. There is also the dimension of rethinking some of these. I mean, when you're thinking about a digital transformation, it's not just about, taking how the people used to work or how the offers were in the market and putting them, backed by technology, but it's also an opportunity to completely rethink those experiences and offers. So I would actually say that these were the two key challenges that we have seen in Syngenta.
So very interesting, Feroz. You're saying perhaps one of your sort of key challenges was getting the customer to accept this transformation and some of the newer solutions that you were providing. Sandeep, was it similar for you? I mean, you're in a different space. I mean, somewhat there are some overlaps there, but would you say that it took the customer a longer time to adjust? Because, one of the points I mentioned during my introduction was that, this whole standardization and really understanding how to follow a cohesive journey when it comes to technology, that's been a bit of a struggle point. Would you concur?
My experience is similar and dissimilar in both ways. First of all, I would like to say that the customer's viewpoint towards your digital transformation as a vendor is altogether different, because probably they are dealing with large number of other vendors, and they may have different systems in their mind, and you need to get calibrated your system with their requirement. So aligning with customers' exact expectation for your digital transformation is the key thing that the organization has to have in the people have to have in their mindsets. That is number one. And second thing is that coming from a different background, like say this is core engineering and typically the conventional manufacturing kind of setups, where having a technology which is widely accepted in all the fields that customer expects is also a greater level of challenge. In this, there is a loss of information which can happen with respect to customer, and customer may or may not accept it very readily. That is one thing. And the part two is the customers sometimes do appreciate your efforts, but may not be very happy with the systems that you are engaging in your digital transformation or the changes in their process with respect to their expectations. So that's why I said that it is more like, means I'm in sync with what Piroj is saying, and as well there are some differences with respect to the kind of organization that I'm representing.
And a very valid point, since you're in the engineering and as you said, manufacturing space. Uh, Vineet, you're actually helping customers come up with solutions when we talk about customer expectations. Are you also sort of, what's the problem statement that typically you come across?
So it's a mixed bag. A lot of customers that we see are grappling with almost like a complete shift in paradigms in terms of their own customers. So whether they are in a B2B or a B2C line of business, power is shifting consistently in the hands of consumers. And the pandemic showed us that as well, that if you cannot engage and reach the end customer and engage with them, build loyalty, build trust, build relevance, you are completely disengaged, disconnected, and you lose out. So we work with the customers to actually understand that changing dynamic, understand patterns of behavior, predict better, engage better, and that's really the space we are seeing more and more, pivotal shift of businesses.
Alicia, when you hear the kind of problem statements that each one of these representing different segments of industry and servicing different kinds of customers, I mean, how do you react? Because ServiceNow is really trying to help companies to integrate and bring across and keep it as simple as possible. The matter of technology and what's the kind of framework and platform that they can use.
Absolutely. Well, the outcome of any real successful digital transformation that I've seen when I speak to leaders across sector industries is really there's got to be a better experience for everyone, which is the wider ecosystem that the particular organization is functioning in. So when we talk about the total experience, so that's creating this more shared superior experiences for suppliers, for vendors, for the partners that work with that organization, and employees and customers alike. So when we talk about the total experience, it's reducing a lot of the fragmentation that we see across people, process, and technology. And we've commonly procured technology in siloed departments as well. So we want to be able to create more of a connected enterprise so that we can start to see the compounding benefits of when we have a particular service request, say from an employee, and let's give an example of if there was a payment issue with getting paid last month, that employee doesn't need to know whether or not that was an IT issue or a system failure, or whether it was a payroll issue or an HR entry error as well. So we want to be able to hide that complexity from the employee and hide the complexity and disparity from the customer as well, which is often going to be much better set up for future success for the organization.
Right. And that's really, I think, the solution that most companies are wanting to really find. And my apologies, it's not Alicia, it's Elisha. And I'll get that right in the subsequent part of the discussion. But Elisha, those are some great points that you've raised. So let me hear a reaction from Feroz, because Feroz, we started with you and you said actually it's not a matter of technology, but meeting customer expectations. But how do you when you have a solution such as the one being presented by Elisha, by many other software providers as well, what really is of paramount importance when you go about choosing some of these technology solutions? Is it about the simplicity? Is it about the integration? Is it something more?
I think it comes back to the user centricity point that we've discussed so far. That whatever solution that we choose has to be able to serve the needs of the users, so create that experience for the users. I think Alicia said it nicely, that it's not about fragmented experiences or the complexity behind these systems. If we are able to bring forward technology and create experiences which are seamless, which would require integrations behind the scenes, it would require creating delightful user experiences for our users. I think those are some of the key enablers that would be needed as part of this transformation.
But isn't that also the biggest challenge? And Sandeep, let me hear from you, because I mean, integration is easier said than done, especially when data and processes are residing in silos across departments. How did you, for instance, as a company which has had a fairly long legacy, and assuming a legacy of technology as well, how did you sort of bridge that gap and come to where you are at present?
I'll just put the point in a slightly different way. Uh, when we are talking about the specific selection of a system or a software, the important point is the user friendliness. That is, of course, means that is one of the specific requirement. But you know, you have to have a centralized system, because we have multiple verticals and many businesses running parallelly, and the expectations of individual user groups, they may be different. And then to have a common thread between all these businesses, when there are customers which are either some business units to have customers from western world, some of them are the typical Indian customers, and then the requirements and expectations from both are different. So the integration part is also important, and therefore something needs to be done, which is which I'll say it is the flexibility or the adaptability of the particular software, which actually is the paramount for the organization that I'm representing. The reason is the flexibility brings the user friendliness. That is one thing. And the second part, which is more important, which I like to say, is that when you are actually dealing with the customers, then the demands from the customer, you should quickly gauge and adapt. And there, something which is more homegrown can, or the system which is suitable for development, somewhat development in-house IT teams or the digital transformation teams, that is more important. That's what we are working with at the moment, and we are successfully working with it.
Okay, great point. In fact, Vineet, how do you react to what Sandeep has said? Because we have seen a lot of companies, especially perhaps those who are starting out or in the small and medium industry space, who sort of struggle with adopting and adapting to these large digital transformation needs. They'd rather keep it in-house, keep it organic, start small. Is that what you also advise clients?
No, absolutely. And one of the key tenets is it has to be relevant. There has to be outcomes. It has to be meaningful for all the users. Alicia also said about the fragmentation challenge. It's also fragmentation of user views as well. Different departments, functions, if they have been running in so-called silos. Uh, we also see that many times there are projects which we may call them the death march kind of projects, where outcomes that stakeholders, users, the community of distributors, dealers, suppliers, and end customers, they all expect. And we see a lot of so-called rescue act, requirements as well, where 80%, 90% of the users don't adopt. Now, that is absolutely dismal in terms of uh, you know the business case being not realized then. So you've delivered, but there are no takers. And I think, that is where, Sandeep's point that, you keep it tight, you keep it close to the users, you can actually get far better outcomes in there. And that is where the whole focus around, also bringing in design thinking and that experience, and relevancy for the users is most important.
Right. When we talk about users, and Elisha, I'm coming to you here, that one is at the customer end. There's also the employee who's using these new technologies and new platforms, and his or her buy-in is equally, if not more important, in order to deliver that kind of experience to the end customer. So, how do you onboard employees, and is there a different solution depending on the scale and size of the company?
Yes, well, I'll start by answering that question in two parts. Is that number one, really investing in your employees and what drives their satisfaction and engagement and therefore retention is absolutely paramount today. And the pandemic certainly taught us a few lessons when it came to really engaging the employees from what their expectations are, from when we think about how we interact in our personal lives and our consumer world on devices like mobile devices. We expect that level of consumerization and technology excellence when it comes to the workplace and how we engage in the workplace and my particular role as an employee at that organization. And so really, because of this expectation where organizations across the different industries, we really need to make work life as great as real life, so to speak, that we can create experiences such as onboarding to be ready on day one and to reduce the time to being proactive and being knowledgeable about my role and being able to have a central place where I can find information, I can look up policies and procedures, I can procure the technology that I need for my role so that we can ensure the employees excel at their job and we reduce the time to competency. I work with a lot of banking clients, and the average banking time to competency for an average employee can be up to 12 months. So that's a new banker coming in and being fully proficient at his role. Well, we can certainly make things a lot more intuitive and easy for that particular individual, where we can surface information, knowledge articles, and role-based procedures and standard operating procedures for them. And we can provide them with an arena so that they have that more one-stop shop for them to feel connected as part of a team and be able to collaborate across different departments as well. So there's certainly a big focus more than ever before, as we've seen this retransformation of how we come to work and how we're able to bring our best self to work as well.
Indeed. And let's hear it from, Feroz here, because, for a company like Syngenta, which is, located across various geographies and looking at the scale of your operations as well, how did you really go about reskilling and upskilling your employees and ensuring that they enjoyed the experience and also improved on their own productivity while using these kind of new technologies?
I think it's important to recognize that technology for technology's sake is not the answer. So exactly, the kind of matrix that what good looks like, what is it that we are trying to achieve, what changes are we trying to drive, and what KPIs can we measure? Can the data tell us that we are being successful in accomplishing this transformation, whether it's in terms of employee satisfaction, feedback, or even the concrete measures like the example from the banking sector that Alicia took, right? How long does it take for a new banker to become productive and fully conversant with the system? The challenge for a company like Syngenta is that across, we have more than 140 countries in which we operate and 40,000 people as a workforce alone. You have different workflows, different solutions, different mindsets, and different skill sets in across different countries. So you can't just big bang roll out a transformation program and expect to go global with it. We have to identify, where its current systems are working well enough, you let them be, and where we want to drive certain changes or impact, identify what good looks like, what are the measures, KPIs that we are going to collect data for, and then focus on those, and then you take it in phases or steps to roll out across other countries.
Okay, Vineet, how do you react to what Feroz has said? Because again, I'll come back to the question about scale and whether one solution fits all, and also the point that Feroz raised that technology may not be the solution, but in a market which is evolving or rather racing, and it is a race that most companies are in to try and be as agile and flexible. Do they really have an option other than to jump onto the technology bandwagon in order to remain competitive?
No, absolutely. I think it's probably the most important question that we're going to discuss. Technology is not the answer. It's actually not even the question. At best, it's an enabler. What our entire focus needs to be is to understand how to be cognizant of all the changes that are happening and how do we rapidly align or proactively, prepare for. And we talked about a lot of shifts in the industry, in user behavior. We keep talking about the pandemic teaching us a lot of lessons. Demand destruction and changes in buying patterns of enterprises, of individuals, of consumers, and supply chain log jams and so on. I mean, all of these are problems that exist, and they're only going to get more pervasive. Uh, which means that we need to be listening in and tuning into all such challenges and then having some rapid experimentation and rapid responses. Technology can help in doing that, provided we are agile and nimble enough. And I think that's the focus that is very relevant in this day and age, where if we are not able to respond quickly, somebody else will, and take the business away, take the customer away, and take the loyalty away. And that's really where, if you see Neelant as well, our focus, our emphasis about humanizing technology is to bring that individual, the person, the consumer, the user, the employee, or the partner in the center, and straight up front, focus on that.
Sandeep?
The say that the technology is not everything is absolutely right, because you need to look into your processes first of all, because unless you have strong processes which are capable of the path of digitalization, the forceful entry into the era of digitalization is not really going to help, because then a lot of clutter will come in. The people will not be really accepting it as it is, and one day the thing will be that the system will be thrown off and people will switch back to the legacy systems. And there where it is more important to train the people. The challenges with respect to the contract environments where there are people changing very frequently, the requirements, the expectations, the customers, the processes, everything is changed every now and then. And then moving from one process to other, moving from one technology to other is more simpler than moving from one process to other, because the process is your own and the technology is provided by anybody who was ready to study your process and come up with the right solution for you. So the real solution lies in understanding your own processes and assessing them, that whether these processes are really worthy and capable of getting digitalized.
Right. So essentially start the process from inside out rather than outside in, I mean, so to speak. Elisha, again, react a little bit to what our panelists have been saying, because if you look at the B2C space, and a lot of companies perhaps focus on outside in, they develop these fancy apps, perhaps haven't really looked at, digitally transforming some of their internal processes to meet those expectations. What's the typical sort of pitfalls that companies should avoid, and how should they really approach this kind of transformation? Should it first begin inwards, where they look at first their own processes and the technologies which can improve them, or should they start outside and look at the customer expectations and then react accordingly?
Well, I think ultimately understanding especially the customer needs and pain points and wants is really first and foremost important. There was, a few points raised. It was absolutely spot on when it comes to this business model transformation and the need to really shift and be agile and adaptive with, more speed and agility to some of these more secular tailwinds that we're seeing in the macroeconomic environment, some of which were discussed by the panelists previously when it comes to the supply chain issues or other disruptive areas from a macro sense. So having an enterprise that is more flexible to different business model changes can really provide a lot more value in the long term. And we see that through when we look at publicly listed companies that are much more thinking about how they can be more sensitive to some of these alignments, and then therefore adapt and change as customer or employee needs change over time as well. So getting to my point around processes is that really you want to foster an environment of continuous improvement. Number one, so you always want to be not only assessing current state and to be, but it's not really to be. There's never really an end state when it comes to business. Your job's never really done, so to speak. And so fostering an environment where you're continuously improving, surfacing insights and data, looking at process inefficiencies, maybe the bottleneck issues or root causes as to why processes are falling over or not working as you would have wished, is that you're able to deep dive into what the root cause analysis is, whether it's a people, process, skills or training need. Why are we suffering from a service delivery perspective? How can we reduce the cost to serve or speed up time to delivery? So these factors are really providing that sense in the enterprise that you can surface the right data, but also keep various stakeholders accountable for that continuous improvement. So really it's a cultural mindset shift as well that we're sort of seeing across all the industries at the moment as it pertains to service excellence or being proficient in business these days as it pertains to being able to be more adaptive.
Indeed. And Feroz, a lot of points around data because and about really, that's the belief that technology and, AI analytics are really that those are the key enablers which will help companies such as yours, for instance, optimize the large volumes of data which is generated, give you those better insights, and at the heart of which is really using technology effectively. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's all about data and letting the data tell you their stories. So in terms of, being able to measure, whether it's about, time to completion or the cost of completion or bottlenecks in our workflows and processes, right? The data will be able to tell us, what parts of our business workflows and processes that we need to focus on for transformation. And I think, in the face of changing macroeconomic conditions, like we discussed, automation using technology is another part of how do you look at the next set of macroeconomic conditions and deal with those. So using data, using AI and machine learning to make spot the right KPIs, which ones we are looking at, cost, completion, and so on. And then, focusing on perhaps improving those through automation is how we are looking at it as well.
Sandeep, for you, has your data strategy yielded the kind of results you were hoping for? Has legacy been a sort of a drag in that sense, some of the legacy systems, and really mining those kind of effective data insights that have been promised at least by, a lot of the technology out there?
Yeah, you're spot on. There was a lot of resistance which we actually faced when we are migrating from one system, which is more of legacy nature. The way the data is stored and analyzed, and the way the newer systems are able to analyze, there was the tussle which was going on. It's the people were not really accepting the way the inputs are coming their way after the analysis, that the same data is providing you tremendous insights that were never available before. Or rather, I'll say that the data was not used the way the digital systems are able to use, because probably the importance of that data, not to keep them in the Excel data sheets or some data loggers or some cameras and their NVRs, DVRs. That was not the real way of storage of data and having a huge, humongous data with us. That was not the real way of operating. But now the systems which are actually analyzing this data and presenting the results out of it, and the levers that need to be operated are clearly pointed out by that analysis, that is more important. So what I'll say is that data utilization of data, the resistance of people to switch to new systems, because there is a lot of change which is coming their way, and the shift in the mindset, shift towards the overall engagement with the customer. All these factors are really important from the analysis point of view than merely the data collection and storage point of view.
Right. So, Vineet, how do you sort of resolve this tussle? Because this pain point is not just Sandeep's alone or of Praj Industries. It's a pain point that we hear across the board from many Indian companies.
If I may give some couple of illustrations of how companies have successfully dealt with this challenge. It all comes down to the kind of benefits that they are planning to find, either as a hypothesis or as a challenge. And we've worked with, for example, one company without naming them, but similar perspective in terms of very heavily engineering focus, and they're trying to figure out, every year they spend time trying to understand how they might be disrupted, what it may take for them to be disrupted, and what should they do about it, what new product line or services should they offer to their entire customer ecosystem. And they use data and insights, and that's what we work with them on, to answer that question each time, each iteration. And it's a very interesting case, because then it's an existential crisis, and everybody then must listen, must align, must engage, uh, because there is no other way you can solve this. So that's one customer. Another customer found an answer by getting engagement through trying to understand who are and what constitutes leadership, who are the best performing teams across the globe, across different functions, and using data and analytics to understand people behavior. So this is employees, of course, but you're not looking for operational metrics like
Right.
performance, like number of hours you put in. So they're trying to understand patterns of behavior that tell them that this is what constitutes a very high performing team, and these are the outliers, and how can we learn from that and standardize and bring it back into almost a process democratization perspective,
So I
and
think,
so on.
Vineet, in both cases, both companies had identified the problem statement quite clearly, and perhaps would you agree that they were able to hence use, the right
I
sort of
think it was more a challenge, Paramita, really. So
Mhm.
they didn't have the problem well defined. They certainly had no sense of solution. But these were challenges that they threw up, and we were able to then work with them with some hypothesis, with some experimentation to find. Uh, the reason for calling these out was, in both cases, and this is the norm now, the organizations all come together then, to engage, to problem solve, to look at how to get better leverage and
Indeed.
insights
And going
from
back to
the
that whole
process.
point, what Alicia was alluding to, which is the cultural shift, where the
It's
whole
correct.
organization is aligned in that common goal. And Alicia, let me come to you here because, so we've heard some, live examples about how a common sort of goal and that cultural shift can yield results, because companies are looking at results, especially in today's macro environment, where every dollar being spent on the IT spend is being looked at very closely, and also the returns on investment, because any kind of digital transformation can be a very expensive endeavor. So, how would you advise companies to really look at this ROI metric when it comes to really yielding the results, while at the same time, being on top of their game when it comes to technology and the excellence that it can deliver?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's about trying to strengthen your time to value, and it's through a number of areas. Really, it's being able to realize what your future state is, and being able to make sure that that's robust for the next 3 years, and that we don't want to be putting in technology that's really can get stale after 12 months, because and like a lot of the things we talked about, business model changes, processes, or shifts with shared services or various operating models can change quite rapidly, or there can be a restructure in the organization. So we really want to be future-proofing against the operating model and being able to see and forecast and see the effects of that and the impact on customers, the impact on employees, and be able to measure those metrics really quickly. But also I'm finding that really successful and rapidly innovating customers that we work with is really being able to also pilot and take a proof of concept, maybe with a particular business unit or one geographical region, if it's a global organization, be able to pilot that and collect a lot of the feedback. So you've got a continuous loop feedback before rolling it out to the wider network. And so really we're able to then see what's working, what's not working, adjust from there and be able to retrofit it out as you can see fit. So really it's about being adaptive and experimental at the same time, but then also being able to say, well, to our earlier point, when it comes to fragmentation and that we tend to procure technology, either say within IT, within HR, within finance, et cetera, and that how can we start to take the benefit of those existing investments and create a layer that has really a system of action and system of engagement over the top, where you can extract the benefit of existing investments in software or technology and amplify that across as a connected enterprise. And so that's what I was alluding to earlier, is that when we have a stack of existing technology and then what's on the horizon, but we want to be able to make sure that those integrations and those connections are really paramount, so that when you're thinking about that enterprise architecture and that strategy around how do I deliver next generation business services, we're really making sure that we're thinking holistically across the enterprise as opposed to in those silos. So that would be my best advice.
Indeed, and that's a key problem area, which is, companies have already invested so much, but it is possible to sort of bring it all together, under one perhaps common platform. Feroz, looking ahead, I mean, the environment just continues to get more and more challenging going forward. As a company, what would you be focusing on, particularly when it comes to matters of technology, which, while, as you said, may not be the core, but it's clearly a huge enabler and is a necessity in today's world to navigate these uncertain times?
Yeah. I'll answer that from three different perspectives. The first is technology that helps reduce costs, by focusing on, let's say, automation and, electronic data capture and things like that. The second is technology that helps in improving productivity of, our workflows, people, in allowing them to scale, so that, where we had one employee able to service 10 customers, can the same employee, by using technology, provide advice to 50 customers, so improving their productivity and scale. And I would say, third piece of technology where it'll help us innovate and develop new products and services by investing in R&D and so on. So these are some of the areas that we are looking at, reducing costs through automation, improving productivity, and becoming a lever of innovation for developing new products and services.
And all the best in that endeavor. I think you're echoing what a lot of companies are striving to do. Sandeep, what about for you at Praj? What's going to be your key priorities and, words of advice? You've been very, honestly, very grounded in terms of the experiences you've had. What would you like to share in terms of your future priorities?
The one thing which we are really working on are replacement of the skills, means the workforce that we have and the skills that are required are typical human skills, and replacing them with a technology is the next level of challenge for us. The reason is that the demand for skill is increasing in market, and the resources are there's a southward movement of the overall number of resources, or the skill levels are not acquired by most of the new generation that we are seeing at the moment. So the first and foremost thing that we are right now working on is how to have technology replacing the typical skills where there are HSE hazards or some occupational hazards are involved, like welding, where a lot of fumes are there. The eyes are constantly subjected to flames and ultraviolet light. There, if we can engage the kind of technology that is we are working upon, there are solutions which are available in market, but they are quite conventional and they are not really able to reach to our expectations of skill replacement. That is one thing. Second part is the interactive systems which will help individuals to work on themselves, like the other panelists were saying, that one person should be able to cater to more number of customers. Similarly, I will say that one person should be able to cater to more number of processes or machines or the products. So there where is the second area where we are working upon, where the training needs of the individuals, they are being assessed at the moment for the transformation purpose, and the teams are working at the moment. We have a drive which we are calling as a pratibimb is basically the reflection that we are saying, and is a complete homegrown drive where there's a major team which is set up under another vice president level person, and he is taking care of the digitalization and transformation. And these are the two basic initiatives at the moment we are working, so that the basic advantages of, say, cost saving and higher productivity, they are obviously going to come.
Okay, so you're looking at really finding solutions that enable you to further automate, to improve productivity. I mean, these are going to be some of your key priority areas. Vineet, how are you looking at the market going forward, and particularly how do you read the customer in terms of their expectations in this market?
So, one of the asks that we hear from customers is being able to quantify, customer behavior. And that means it's a mix of, a lot of deep learning, data science, emotional analytics, design thinking. And we've got some patents and IPs that we have built on that, but it remains a constant challenge to, from customers to be able to democratize that, to roll it out across the enterprise. So understanding the customer and being able to quantify that understanding and make it relevant, I think that's one biggest ask. Second one is, it's a key point that we've all heard on this forum, which is how do you do a lot more experiments, fail fast, learn fast, and be able to roll out innovations across processes, functions, across, and kind of templatize that, roll it out. Definitely focus area. And I think third, is understanding employees and being able to retain them, being able to nurture them, being able to push through high performers and understand that better. So and around that to build a whole community engagement, most critical, then something that adds value from the business to the community as well. We find these as the most uh, recurring themes that we hear.
And these you anticipate to continue in terms of
In
what's
fact, even
likely to
more so. In fact,
even
on
more.
our plate, this pivotal shift is there now completely.
Okay, so I mean, you're not going to be able to survive unless you cater to some of these aspects. Alicia, the final word goes to you, because the market is getting tougher and tougher, and we are looking at some sort of a recession now across the world in various degrees of intensity. So, in this particular market, what would be your key pieces of advice as companies finalize their IT spends and they still look at trying to stay ahead of customer expectations? What would you leave them as words of advice in terms of their key priority areas?
Yes, well, I think, and what was raised just now is also focused on ESG and sustainability. We're seeing a lot of these new trends that weren't here before. And so really being agile and adaptive and innovating in these areas is certainly what employees are expecting and customers are expecting. So we're seeing transitions in the market. And also organizations are becoming much more global and they're facing a global stage and therefore the challenges that come with that as well. And so I really encourage everybody to foster innovation and align that to their strategy, whether it is focused on service delivery or new products for the market. But having that mindset shift is really what's paramount now, while we've still got time to race against competition, in that we're seeing such a rapid pace of with technology, but at the same time, enterprise are really looking at making sure that they can retain the skills and talent in the market and be an employer of choice. So I would say it's certainly being able to focus on the human elements and having technology as an enabler is certainly how you scale. But also I would also stress that when we think about transformation more broadly, we need to start to look at how, as we all agreed today, is to really look at continuous improvement and innovation at scale when it comes to looking at your data and really having a control tower view of how am I running the business, how am I managing risk, how am I reacting, and instead of becoming a knee-jerk reaction to any sort of customer constraint or particular tailwind that we're seeing, how can we be more predictive and more proactive in our engagement with customers and employees? And really there's that expectation around that. So I would say we're certainly seeing shifts with organizations where they've been reactive in the past and they're having to be much more proactive. And we can do that through much more automation, much more intelligence into the workflows and processes, but also enabling our people to work with machines and help them innovate so we can automate the mundane administrative tasks that they do in their day-to-day roles so that they are able to achieve that next level value tasks and added value with customers and employees whom they work with on a day-to-day basis. So it certainly is a journey and we're all on that journey. And so it's really being able to connect with your ecosystem, learn from each other, like forums like this, and continue to innovate. So thank you all the panelists. It was a great discussion.
That brings us to the end of this special discussion. And at the core of it, we've discovered that technology is indeed a key enabler, but companies need to learn how to use it effectively so that they are no longer reactive to the market conditions, but rather are proactive in anticipating what the customer wants and in keeping their employees engaged as well. Thank you so much for joining us on this special discussion.
Forbes India and ServiceNow present the COO Collective.